Hey guys, this is Eckhart Slaughter. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars lore video, and we have a very interesting one today because we are discussing one of the most secretive and unknown parts of the entire Empire and taking a closer look at the inner workings of Imperial intelligence. So I'm going to spend some time giving a bit of a summary here for how Imperial intelligence works, then I'm going to cover the subject of today's video, the Ubictorate. Feel free to skip around using the timestamps down below. Now, when you think of Imperial intelligence, the thing that probably comes to mind is the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau. However, the ISB actually had a fairly narrow role related to intelligence, and as we'll get to in a minute, was technically a part of Compnor. Specifically, the ISB was mostly responsible for identifying threats within the Empire itself, which is why they frequently weren't very well liked by those in the military or other branches of Imperial service. Imperial intelligence as a whole had a very wide mandate, and its organizational structure was actually established as early as the West End Games Imperial Sourcebook. You can see looking at this chart that Imperial intelligence was subdivided into several sections, including Intelligence, Bureau of Operations, Analysis, Internal Organization Bureau, and more, with Imperial Security as a whole responsible for the monitoring of everything from galaxy-wide holonet and comm traffic, to the Bureau, which handled covert operations including surveillance, infiltration, and even the assassination of individuals and the destabilization of foreign powers. Some of these are probably worth more time, and maybe I'll discuss them in a future video. For example, the destabilization arm of the Bureau had a reputation for, and I quote, moving from what agents considered legitimate intelligent operations into full-fledged atrocities. Given the shadowy ethics of Imperial intelligence, this says quite a bit about DSTAB. Other aspects of Imperial intelligence also exist, not included on this figure, including, for example, the Inquisitorius, responsible for hunting down Force-sensitive beings. Now, as I mentioned, the ISB, of course, cannot be found here, and that's because the ISB technically fell under the jurisdiction of Compnor, the Commission for the Preservation of the New Order. Compnor was essentially a propaganda tool and was meant to force adherence to the Empire and, of course, ultimate loyalty to Emperor Palpatine. Because of the importance and use of propaganda, many aspects of Compnor were actually public-facing, including the ISB, which actually not only monitored those within the Empire's formal structure, but also citizens of the galaxy, and other groups which could actually be joined by the public. Both Compnor and Imperial intelligence are nefarious in their own ways, and they both certainly committed evil. However, I personally find Imperial intelligence more interesting because of how secretive everything was. And again, Imperial intelligence was responsible for everything from destabilizing foreign powers to monitoring the media. So it was probably appropriate that Imperial intelligence fell under the jurisdiction of the highly mysterious Imperial Ubictorate. The Ubictorate reported directly to Emperor Palpatine and other high-ranking members of the Empire chosen by Palpatine, and we know very little about how it actually works. The Imperial Sourcebook tells us that the Ubictorate was created as a governing body for Imperial security at the formation of the New Order, and that those within the Ubictorate generally prefer the methods of Imperial intelligence, i.e. assassinations, versus the softer propaganda methods of Compnor. The Ubictorate has full power over Imperial intelligence, second only to Palpatine himself, and is solely concerned with protecting the Empire from its enemies. The Imperial Sourcebook explains that the Ubictorate works on a very high level, presenting the Imperial intelligence sub-bureaus with broad goals and strategy while leaving the details to their subordinates. Members of the Ubictorate were totally anonymous and identified themselves only as the Ubictorate, not as individuals. The Ubictorate had direct control of not only these sub-bureaus, but also adjustments, an incredibly elite branch of intelligence who were subject only to the will of the Ubictorate and actually met the Ubictorate in person to receive their orders. These were the most secret of secret missions, and adjustment agents were given total discretion discretion and power to do whatever necessary to solve the problem presented to them. Unlike most elements of, say, Comp Nor, the Ubictorate was certainly not known to the public at large, or even truly most of those within the military or lower levels of intelligence. It was simply a way for Palpatine to pass broad mandates to Imperial intelligence and have them disseminated and properly completed. This was actually not surprising. There were other very highly secretive aspects of Imperial intelligence. I've talked about the Force user Chronal in the past, who went by the name Black Hole as the director of Imperial intelligence. Now, it does seem like Imperial intelligence director was actually a position within the Ubictorate. However, these individuals were not typically anonymous in the same way and seemed to liaise between other aspects of Imperial government and military. Famous directors of Imperial intelligence included Azani Isard and her father Armand Isard, and as I just mentioned, Chronal, otherwise known as Black Hole. Black Hole was a very, very mysterious figure. He almost always appeared as a large hologram. He had his own cadre of Special Forces units who may have been a part actually of the adjustment. And of course, he was a dark side Force user who cheated death several times. So yeah, the Ubictorate is probably the most strange and unknown aspect of Imperial intelligence and probably the entire Galactic Empire. Although the Ubictorate is featured in the Imperial Sourcebook and other secondary materials, it's not really present throughout most Star Wars Legends novels. However, the Ubictorate base at Yaga Minor does play a prominent role in the Thrawn duology, as it's believed to be a possible location of the Ka Moss document. Anyway guys, that's all I have for you today. I just want to take a second and remind you all that I'm almost finished a really cool video that I've been working on all about every single war and conflict which took place in Star Wars Legends after the Battle of Endor. Now obviously a lot of that is the New Republic versus the Empire and all of the little sort of smaller conflicts that arose after the Galactic Civil War, but there's also a lot of really strange stuff, some of which you've probably never heard of. Anyway guys, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, have a good one, be safe, and of course, may the Force be with you.